Hello there, and welcome back to the eLearning Champion podcast, where we explore key strategies, trends, and innovations shaping the world of digital learning. If you've been searching for the cheat code to design better learning, you're in luck. Prepare for a high score. Calling in Bret Wardle, who will share how gamification can transform your L&D into an epic quest. Hi there, Bret.
Hey, how are you doing? It's so glad I'm so happy to join you.
Wow, that's really nice to hear. So, Brett brings 15 years of passion from Salt Lake City and crafts better digital experiences by applying game mechanics and psychology. He uniquely asks what makes gamers tick, finding practical design lessons in unexpected places, as highlighted in his 2022 TEDx talk. When he's not building, he's exploring games across all eras and mediums, convinced they hold valuable lessons for today's experience design. This blend of experience, curiosity, and love for games helps him spot unique possibilities. We are thrilled to have you as our guest, Brett.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. That is an amazing intro. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the mention. Now, before we dive in, dear listeners, make sure you're a true e learning champion by hitting that follow button from wherever you're listening in to us from. Moving to the first question, Brett, how did you originally become interested in game and gamification design?
Yeah, so I grew up a lifelong gamer. Like I've been playing
Wow.
games since I was a little kid and have always loved it. And it started actually in game design. Like a lot of people kind of start in software or L&D design and then kind of start to learn a little more about games. I spent over a decade in the game design field. I worked for some
Wow.
small studios in Salt Lake, worked for Electronic Arts, working on the Sims franchise. Even worked in the birth of sort of Facebook gaming and kind of that explosion of mobile gaming when it kind of took off. And ultimately, like, just kind of got a little bit burnt out from that industry and moved my way over to software, but found that is right when user experience design and product management was sort of taking off, and found that what game designers have been doing for 20, 30, 40 years even is not much different than what user experience design does. We're still looking
Right.
for what makes the user engage with a product, what keeps it sticky, all of those same kind of things. So that's really where I found my entry point, was moving from game design to software design, and I've kind of been here ever since. I love kind of finding that mix between how can we talk about software the same way we talk about games. Like I can sit down with a
Wow.
friend over coffee or dinner and talk about the latest game for hours, but we don't have those same conversations about clearing our inbox or
Right.
the latest spreadsheet we built or anything like that. So
Right.
that's really how I got into it.
Wow, interesting. Now, could you explain what the term gamification means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So gamification as a term in whole is kind of this is like blessing and curse, right? Like a lot of people view it as sometimes a negative term. It gets this kind of
Right.
bad connotation where people kind of feel like, hey, that's just you're just adding high scores and leaderboards to things, and not everything has to be a game or a competition.
Right.
And so I think a lot of times people are turned away from that. Um,
Correct.
which rightfully so. Like a competition, a high score isn't for everyone, and that's one of the things that I try to push is like we can't just make everything a high score and call it
Right.
gamification. But at its core, gamification is simply using game design mechanics and game design psychology in in non-traditional game settings. So instead of a video
Correct.
game or a board game or anything like that, you're applying these same mental models, the same psychology to the software we use every day, to the learning and engagement that we build and design every day. And at its core, that's it. And so whether we like the term, dislike the term, unfortunately, it's the term that's stuck. And so we're
Right.
forced to use it. And I think we as gamification designers just need to be better at informing people what it can be, that it is more than leaderboards and badges and achievements and that kind of stuff. There's a lot more to it. There's storytelling, there's narrative, there's
Yes.
customization, there's boss battles, there's all these different things that don't have to do with competition and I can beat you and I'm better than you. And we as designers have to get better at explaining that if we want that term to lose some of that connotation.
Wow, absolutely. Yes. Now, as someone who started in traditional video game design, what things do you think the industry does well that L&D professionals could learn from?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing as a game designer was you spent a pretty large amount of your time just researching. Like you would
Wow.
just
Yeah.
play games. You would, I mean, I would say it was probably like 50% of a game designer's time was research. Like we were playing games. If we got a new game, like I remember one of my favorite stories is back in the day, I was on a team that was building a sort of like Mario Party-esque game, but it was around a
Wow.
different intellectual property. And we as designers locked ourselves in a room. We said, hey, we're going to spend 24 hours in this room. We're not going to come out. We're going to have someone deliver us food, and we are
Right.
going to play every single Mario Party game for those 24 hours. And we have a dry erase board. We're going to start taking notes of like all the mini games we can play, all the customization ideas. And we spent all that time just researching and playing other games and taking notes and keeping this like meticulous set of data for what was good, what was bad, what we
Hmm.
did like, what we didn't like, who we thought our key player was, like what was our
Wow.
demographic. And sometimes in L&D design and software design, we lose track of that. We don't research. And
Yes.
I'm amazed at how often when I talk to people about gamification design and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to implement an avatar building system." And I'm like, "Oh, have you tried like Mass Effect or The Sims? Like they have incredible avatar systems." People are like, "Oh, I don't play games. Like I just design L&D." And I'm like, "How can you like call yourself a gamification designer and not play games? Like we have
Not
to
play games.
understand we have to
Yes.
understand the medium." And so I think that's the biggest thing from that perspective. Like as a game designer, you had to play games. Like you had to understand the mechanics. You had to know what worked well, what didn't work well, what was good for your demographic. And I think we need to take that on a little bit more. One of my mantras as I talk and discuss with people about gamification is the sense of play more games. Like that's the one thing that I
Right.
want people to take away is, hey, as gamification designers, we have to be playing more games. We have to understand those
Right.
mechanics even better.
Right. Interesting. Yes. Now, likewise, what is something that traditional game design and development could learn from the things that we do in L&D design?
I mean, the one thing that I love in software design, L&D design is we on this side of the fence are significantly better at the project management, the product management side of things. We're better at putting in Jira tickets and keeping track of work and scoping things out and putting things to a calendar. Like I can't even think about the amount of crunch time that I had in game design where we were coming up against a deadline and we were sleeping under our desks. We were like waking up and doing it again. These were like 20-hour days with like
Wow.
four
Yes.
hours of horrible sleep. And I think
Right.
that's one of the things that the game design field can kind of take away. We also use better, like we do better at creating personas and making empathy maps and some of the
Yes.
more tangible things that we have in design. I think are better on this side of the fence. As a game designer originally, like when I was in the field, we had like some architecture type documents where we're like, hey, we're building this game for 5 to 12-year-olds who
Right.
play on consoles, but it was flimsy at best. So I think we do a significantly better job of that on our side of the fence and making sure that we hit deadlines, we know what we need to do. And
Right.
so I think if we could combine those two things, the research from game design and the project and product management from software design, we could have this like best of both worlds.
Wow. Yeah. That's a unique combination. Yes. Now, in the past, you've talked about the value of studying gaming history. Could you tell us why you feel this would be valuable for those in the L&D field?
Yeah, I love gaming history. Like I don't know if you know the term ludology, but it's the study of games. And
Wow.
I like thinking about how far games have gone back, and it's honestly no different than any other history. Like if you want to be a politician, you go and study political history. If you want to
Correct.
be a scientist, like you have to go and study like, hey, where have we come in the field of science over the last 50, 100, 200 years.
Yes.
Gaming is no different. If we want to be a gaming designer, we should know throughout history what worked, what didn't
What?
work.
Correct.
Because the game industry has had ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and we can learn from those things. I mean, gaming is baked into our DNA. Like games go back 8,000 years. Like they've
Wow.
unearthed giant, what I consider like the original arcade, where in Kenya there's multiple Mancala boards dug into
Wow.
rock where societies would gather and play Mancala
Play
together.
games.
And part of it is the socialization, some of it's the competition. Like, I mean, we honestly don't know because these games predate like good history and bookkeeping. So we
Right.
really don't even know what the purpose was, but it was there. Like people have been
It was
playing games for 8,000 years. And even if we look more recently, the birth of computers, like if you go back to EDSAC, EDNIAC, like EDVAC, all these original giant computers where they're taking up whole rooms, it took less than 10 years from the invention of the modern computer for us to go, well, what should we do with all this power? And we went, well, let's make a game. Like we have
yes.
OXO, we have Space War, we have Tennis for Two. It took less than a decade for us to go, hey, we have all this power, let's make games. And that was one of the first things we sort of jumped to. So I really do think there's a ton to learn from there. And I've talked at a couple of conferences about those lessons. And you can find even some of those, like if you venture out to my YouTube, or I have links as well to some of those presentations. I like to share. I'm a proponent of the democracy of information. I'm happy to share any
Right.
of those lessons. But yeah, I could talk about the history of games for a really long time. It's a topic that's very close to my heart.
That's visible. Yes. Okay. Now, what are some of the distinct lessons you can think we learned from the history of games?
Yeah, so three of my favorites. I have three that I kind of always go to because I think they have very distinct examples. One is the idea of quality over quantity. Like
Wow.
throughout the history of games, I kind of mentioned that ebb and flow. We've had a couple of points where game companies were just putting out as many things as they could, hoping that like, hey,
Right.
if I release enough stuff, one of these will be good. And you saw
Right.
this, like the video game crash of the 1980s was really based on that. It was, hey, we're just going to put as many games out there, and society in general grew this like distrust of the game industry.
Yes.
They were like, hey, I'm paying this money for this game and it's garbage. And part of that was
Right.
like the ET game on the 2600, or the Pac-Man port to the 2600 is one that comes out. And it more or less crashed the video game industry, and it was struggling. And it wasn't until Nintendo came in and created this
Yes.
like original quality seal where people knew,
Quality.
hey, if it has that Nintendo seal, it's good, it's of quality. And that
Correct.
honestly is like what kind of brought the video game industry back. Like it was like halfway in its grave before that happened. And so you see that over and over, and it's repeated itself a couple of times in that industry. So that's one of the lessons that I really like. One of the others that I actually love Nintendo for as well is this idea of build, buy, partner. Like trying to
Wow.
understand,
Yes.
hey, as designers, as builders, when do we build something ourselves? When do we purchase a something to help us? And when do we partner with someone? And
Right.
Nintendo has kind of been great at this through the years. They have these great intellectual properties themselves. They have got Mario,
Right.
Metroid, Zelda, like all these things, but they know when to partner with people. And some of the great examples of that are um, the Super Mario RPG. They like years ago on the Super Nintendo, they wanted to build an RPG. They had this Mario property, but they had never built a role-playing game before. And so they reached out to Square, that had built ton. They're the makers of Final Fantasy, who have built these huge, fantastic RPGs. And they kind of said, hey, we have our intellectual property. you guys are great at building role-playing games. Let's bring this together. Let's partner, and
Right.
you build an RPG based on our property. And they created an incredible game by being able to know, like, hey, we're out of our own element here. We don't know how to do this. We need to partner with someone that does. And you see the
Right.
same as we go through history. They do it again with like Smash Brothers. They're like, hey, we have
Yes.
the Smash Brothers franchise where we're bringing together all these characters. And very quickly, they ran out of Nintendo properties. We're like, okay, we can add Zelda, we can add Mario, we can add Metroid, we can add Donkey Kong, and now we're kind of out. And so then you start seeing those like the build by partner conversation. We're like, hey, how do we get Sonic into the game? How do we get
Right.
all these other properties that aren't Nintendo properties into our franchise so that all the players can enjoy us? And I think that's
Enjoy.
a great lesson as well. And then the other one that becomes more recent is the idea of building systems over one-off features. A lot of times as designers, we think, hey, if I add this one feature, it can make something better. We're starting to go the way of needing to build systems. You see this in games like Minecraft, Roblox, Fortnite. They've built these
Right.
systems where users can create content. Like they're making
Right.
the majority of their money on user generated content. Like it has nothing
Content.
to do with stuff they've built themselves. They've
Right.
made tools, they've built the systems for other people to build stuff for them. And so we can't always do that as L&D designers. Like we can't take user generated content as it is
Yes.
all the time, but we can start to build systems where maybe the users have some input. Maybe what the users do shift and change the way that we learn, and we can start learning as a community. And instead of us having to be in charge of making every change and validating everything, we can build this community where that system controls itself to a certain extent. And I think those like there's a whole bunch more lessons, but those are kind of three of my favorite from the
Mhm.
industry.
And three really good lessons indeed. Now, coming to now that we've learned the three lessons, how has the history of games shaped the current trends in gamification for educational purposes?
Yeah, for sure. Like edutainment, as we call it, like the mix of entertainment and
Entertainment.
education, have
Yes.
have been around for forever, right? Like I remember, like in the
Right.
United States, we had the Oregon Trail game was like the one that, at least my age, I may be dating myself, but that was what we played when we were kids. Like we would learn about the United States history through this game, and it still is like you can still find copies of Oregon Trail and remakes of Oregon Trail all over because it was engaging. Like it taught us something, but was an engaging game. Like you take the history out of it, and it's still
Right.
fun to play. Oregon Trail. So these things aren't new. They've been around forever. But I think
Right.
as we start to migrate, we need to start thinking about. It kind of goes back to the playing more games. We need to absorb those games, try them, and try to find the psychological links. Like that's the biggest thing to me is
Right.
how we talked about how I can have spirited conversations about video games for hours, but I don't always do the same about my latest training or learning or anything like that. That's kind of pushed to the wayside. It's, that's work, and that's something
Right.
I have to do for work, and that's something I have to do for school or whatever it is. I think we need to start thinking about that psychology different. Like how can we make the conversations we have around L&D, around products be closer to like we have for games. And we
Right.
really need to hone in on that psychology and think about, hey, throughout history of games, what has created these conversations? What fosters a good conversation and a spirited conversation, and how can we take those same mechanics, those same psychology elements, and put them into our products? And that's kind of the way I think we need to start thinking, and looking through the history of games and trying these games and kind of taking meticulous notes on like, hey, how did this make me feel? What did I
Right.
do? And thinking about it from that perspective, I think is that next step for us.
Right. Interesting. So, what would you suggest to help e-learning champions experience more games themselves?
Yeah. The greatest thing that the society we live in now, a lot of times, like games can be an undertaking, right? Like a
Right.
few weeks ago, I just finished the Last of Us series, and it's
Wow.
like a 40-hour game. And we don't
Yes.
like those, like in the professional setting, we don't always have 40 hours to
40
sit and
hours,
play
yes.
the game. But the nice thing is we now have the ability, we have YouTube, we have Twitch, we have podcasts. Like there are video gaming podcasts where
Yes.
if there's a game that I want to understand, if I'm like, hey, I don't have the 40 hours to go and play The Last of Us, but I want to understand the design elements, I want to maybe see how it made people feel.
Yes.
I can fire up any one of those. I mean, I just released on my YouTube channel a roughly 1 hour video that talks about all the game mechanics of The Last of Us and how they work, what works well, what doesn't. And there's hundreds others just like that. So if I come across the game where I'm like, hey, I'm building an L&D experience that is really heavy on character creation. And I
Right.
know that Mass Effect, The Sims, some of these other games have great character
Great
creation.
characters.
I
Yes.
can just go out and search. If I don't have the
Right.
time to play those myself, I can go find a podcast, I can go find a YouTube video, I can do any number of things and cut that research. Instead of me having to go and research for 10, 20 hours, I can watch a 30-minute
Right.
video about the character creation process and see, okay, yeah, I see what they did there. That's a really good idea. Or, oh, yeah, this is more like The Sims is a great example. Like it has way more controls than you would probably ever need for an L&D design. But it's great to see like, wow, they have a lot of stuff here. What out of all this stuff that they have, what's good, what's bad, what do I need, what do my users care about? Like maybe my users don't care about changing the facial features, or maybe
Right.
we're making it cartoon, so we don't need that level of fidelity. I can go and do that research significantly faster than I could 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And now
Absolutely.
as we step into an AI age, that goes even faster. Like I can go
Right.
and take some of this data. I can take a 1 hour video and have ChatGPT condense it down to a couple paragraphs for me. Or I
Right.
can go out if I don't know what games to play. This is what I use a lot of AI for is if I don't know some of the games, if I'm like, hey, I'm building let's say a double jump mechanic for whatever reason. I'm
Right.
like, hey, what games have the best double jump mechanics? I can go to ChatGPT and it'll give me a list of like, hey, here's games that use double jump effectively. And then I can go and do that research. I prefer to play my games just
Right.
because I'm a gamer, a lifelong gamer. But being able to find those games can be time consuming. And now I can use AI to do that. So we have tons of tools at our disposal now that we didn't have 5, 10 years
5 years ago.
ago. So we really have to dive in and try to experience these things.
Absolutely. Now, when creating a new gamified process, what things do you feel are the most important things to consider?
Yeah. So I've talked about this at a number of conferences, but I go back to what I call the gamification triforce, right? Like it's a triad. I call it the triforce because as a gamer, like that just is better to me. But the key is understanding the three things. Understanding what type of user are you going to have?
Right.
What type of KPI or key performance indicator are you trying to change? And then finding the game mechanics that match those two. Because
Right.
every user
Yes.
is a little bit different. Sometimes
Correct.
we don't put ourselves into the shoes of our user, and that's where you run into that problem of like, hey, what if I just add a high score list? Well, high score lists don't actually work for the
Right.
majority of people. There's a very small sector of users that enjoy competition. And if
Competition.
my
Yes.
users are not those type of users, they don't like competition, then it's not going to be effective. And
Correct.
on the same line, if I'm trying to enact change on a certain key performance indicator, maybe it's engagement, maybe it's growth, maybe it's retention, or maybe I have financial KPIs where I'm trying to enact like sales or something like that. Those are all different as well. And what game mechanics work for engagement are sometimes different for what works for retention. Like if I want someone to stick with my software, stick with my learning, the game mechanics I might use are different than if I want someone to maybe convert, if I want them to convert from a
Right.
free to a paid membership. And so we've got to understand those things. And so anytime you're biting off a new project in the L&D space, especially within gamification, it's worth the time to think about those things and think about, hey, what type of user do I
What
have?
type of user?
What type of of key performance indicator am I trying to get to, and then find the game mechanics that work for that. For that user type, I don't know if you're familiar with the hexad player type. But the hexad player types are kind of what I go to. It's a system that's been around for a little bit, and it's one of those like, if it isn't broken, don't try to fix it. And I just kind of stick with that. I think it does a really great job. It kind of combines like the Bartles player type, if you're familiar with the Bartles player types. It combines that with self-determination theory. And so it kind of mixes the like, what do players do and why do they do it? And smashing those two things together, I think is exactly what we need to do as designers, is understanding both sides of that coin.
Wow, interesting. Now, in both your book, Gamification for Product Excellence, and your TED Talk, you discuss gamification for product design. How does that differ from learning design in particular?
To be honest, not a lot. Like that's the greatest thing is there's not a huge difference, I would say, between those two. And that's kind of what I love. Like I'm not traditionally an L&D designer. I've kind of found my way into this space through product design. But when it's all said and done, both sides of that coin, we're both trying to create engagement. We're both trying to create retention. We both want our users to like keep information and have it stick with them. Like the goals are the same. Like whether you're using a product or building a training or even building games, like a lot of times people kind of lose track of like what the purpose of a game is, but ultimately a game's goal is you want your players to be engaged with your game. You want your players to enjoy your game. You want them to stick with your game. You want retention. So whether we're talking about L&D, whether we're talking about product design, or whether we're talking about actual game design, it's all the same. Like we can put a different skin on it, but we all want the same stuff. We all want to keep our players. We all want to make our players happy. And we all want our players to kind of stick with us and enjoy those experiences. So it's always fun to me to kind of talk about whenever someone brings up the like, hey, what are the difference between these things? To be honest, there's not a lot. Like we skin it a different way, and how we make money from things is obviously different. But at its core, we really just want people to enjoy things. And whether that's a game or it's a training or it's a product, it's kind of all one and the same.
Wow, interesting. Interesting. Now, coming to one of my favorite questions, what future trends do you foresee in the intersection of gamification and L&D and UX design?
Yeah, so for me, we talk about the future, right? We say like, hey, what does the future hold for us? I almost go back. We talked about the history. I kind of go back to the history. Like I think a lot of things, we're reaching this sort of like fulcrum where things are going to go full circle. Like games, we talked about 8,000 years ago in Kenya. Games are in our DNA. Like we are inherently programmed to play games, enjoy games, socialize around games. It's kind of baked into what we do. And I think we're finally coming more full circle with that. That there was this stigma with gaming for a while, like, oh, gamers are just young. They're just young kids. Like only kids play games. And there was this weird stigma that kind of happened in the 80s and 90s that painted a really weird picture of games and gamers. And I think as that generation, as our generation gets older and we kind of realize like, no, everyone is a gamer. Like those of us that are getting older grew up on games. I think we're finally coming full circle where that stigma is sort of finally disappearing. We don't have the same conversations where we have, I mean, a lot of times, I don't know if you've come across this, but sometimes executive leadership, that older generation, is like, no, we don't want to do gamification design. Games are for kids. Our users aren't kids. Well, our users are those kids. Like we're getting to the point where the people that are our users were that gaming generation. They grew up in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, are now reaching adulthood, and they are the ones doing the trainings and getting the education and all of that stuff. And so I think the future kind of holds that stigma will disappear. There's not the stigma tied to someone that enjoys video games or someone that enjoys board games. Those walls are being broken down, and I think that's a big part of it. And as we get
Yes.
more and more through to that, we also all of these people that are growing into gamification are more familiar with other game mechanics too, which is great for us. It
Yes.
used to be that, okay, in the 80s, video games were you run, you jump, you shoot. That's kind of like the only mechanics. There wasn't always a lot of story, this and that. Well, we're getting to the point where some of these games that have an incredible story and puzzles and character building,
Yes.
they're 20 years old at this point. I mean,
Yes.
if we look back to what was built in the early 2000s, that's now 20 years old, and we're talking about
Yes,
games like
absolutely.
Half-Life and Monkey Island. Like, some of these games have incredible mechanics, and so we're getting past the point of, well, gaming is just running, jumping, shooting. Well, it's not
Right.
anymore. We have
Yes.
incredible stories, and I'm excited to see as we get older and as us as L&D designers can start to reach out and touch these other things where it's like, hey, gaming isn't just about the high scores from arcades anymore. We now have
Right.
all these other game mechanics at our disposal. It's an exciting time. I think we can do some really incredible things as we move towards the future of gamification design.
Wow, yes, it's incredibly an exciting time. And what an incredible discussion we have had, Brett. We are all feeling ready to hit the start button on our next gamified learning adventure. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was such a great conversation.
Absolutely. So, dear listeners, do take a moment to share your feedback with us. Find CommLab India on your favorite social media platforms. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you're following the eLearning Champion podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care and happy learning.